Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well, हाँ. तो पढ़ाई वढ़ाई कैसी चल रही है आप सबकी? वीडियोस वगैरह देख रहे हैं आप कि नहीं देख रहे हैं? व्यूज़ तो नहीं आ रहे हैं तो लग रहा है देख तो नहीं रहे हैं, पर देखिए वीडियोस. और बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं. आप लोगों को एनसीईआरटी पढ़ने में बहुत दिक्कत होती है, तभी ये सारी चीज़ें मैं खुद फेस की हैं, तभी हम लोग ये वीडियोस बना रहे हैं. और हम लोग अभी ह्यूमन फिजियोलॉजी कर रहे हैं, जिसमें कि हम लोगों ने 2 चैप्टर ऑलरेडी कवर कर लिए हैं. अब हम लोग पढ़ने जा रहे हैं बॉडी फ्लूइड्स एंड सर्कुलेशन. चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं. You have learned that all living cells have to be provided with nutrients, O2 and other essential substances. Also, the waste or harmful substances produced have to be removed continuously for healthy functioning of tissues. It is therefore essential to have efficient mechanism for the movement of these substances to the cells and from the cells. Different groups of animals have evolved different methods for this transport. Simple organisms like sponges and coelenterates circulate water from their surrounding through their body cavities to facilitate the cells to exchange these substances. More complex organisms use special fluids within their body to transport such material. Blood is the most commonly used body fluid by most of the higher organisms, including humans, for this purpose. Another body fluid, lymph, also help in the transport of certain substances. In this chapter, you will learn about the composition and property of blood and lymph. Lymph is a tissue fluid, and the mechanism of circulation of blood is also explained herein. Blood is a special connective tissue, consists of a fluid matrix, plasma, and the formed elements. Plasma is a straw-colored viscous fluid constituting nearly 55% of the blood. 90 to 92% of the plasma is water, and proteins contribute 6 to 8% of it. Fibrinogen, globulin, and albumin are the major proteins. Fibrinogens are needed for clotting or coagulation of blood. Globulin primarily are involved in defense mechanism of the body, and the albumin help in osmotic balance. Plasma also contains small amount of minerals like sodium ion, calcium ion, magnesium ion, bicarbonate, chloride ion, etc. Glucose, amino acid, lipid, etc. are also present in the plasma, as they are always in transit in the body. Factor for coagulation and clotting of blood are also present in the plasma in an inactive form. Plasma without the clotting factor is called serum. ठीक है, तो सीरम बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, इस पे भी क्वेश्चन आते हैं. Next is formed element. Erythrocytes, leukocytes, and platelets are collectively called formed elements, and they constitute nearly 45% of the blood. Erythrocytes, or RBCs, that is red blood cells, are the most abundant of all the cells in blood. A healthy adult man has on an average 5 million to 5.5 millions of RBCs, millimeter of blood. Okay, mm cube of blood. RBCs are formed in the red bone marrow in the adult. RBCs are devoid of nucleus in most of the mammals and are biconcave in shape. They have a red colored iron containing complex protein called hemoglobin, has the color and name of these cells. Healthy individual has 12 to 16 gram of hemoglobin in every 100 ml of blood. These molecules play a significant role in transport of respiratory gases. RBCs have an average lifespan of 120 days, after which they are destroyed in the spleen. Spleen is the graveyard of RBCs. Leukocytes are also known as WBCs, that is white blood cells, as they are colorless due to the lack of hemoglobin. They are nucleated and are relatively lesser in number, which averages 6,000 to 8,000 mm³ of blood. Leukocytes are generally short-lived. We have two main categories of WBCs, granulocytes and agranulocytes. Neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils are different types of granulocytes, while lymphocytes and monocytes are agranulocytes. Neutrophils are the most abundant cells, 60 to 65% of the total WBCs, and basophils are the least, 0.5 to 1% among them. Neutrophils and monocytes 6 to 8% are phagocytic cells which destroy foreign organisms. तो ये सबका जो है कि ए ग्रैनुलो कौन कौन होती हैं, कौन कितनी परसेंट की होती हैं, ये भी याद रखना होगा. एंटरिंग द बॉडी, बेसोफिल सिक्रीट हिस्टामीन, सेरोटोनिन, हेपारिन एक्सेट्रा, ये भी इंपॉर्टेंट है. एंड आर इन्वॉल्व इन इन्फ्लेमेटरी रिएक्शंस. यूसिनोफिल्स 2 to 3% रेजिस्ट इन्फेक्शंस एंड आर ऑल्सो. उससे पहले नीचे ये डायग्राम, नीचे जो फिगर है 18.1, इसमें आरबीसी, प्लेटलेट्स, योसिनोफिल, बैसोफिल्स, न्यूट्रोफिल्स, मोनोसाइट, टी लिम्फोसाइट, बी लिम्फोसाइट, इन सब के डायग्राम याद कर लेना. इसके डायग्राम्स आते हैं, पूछे जाते हैं, ठीक है. Associated with allergic reactions, lymphocytes 20 to 25% are of two major types, B and T forms. Both B and T lymphocytes are responsible for immune responses of the body. Platelets are also called thrombocytes, are cell fragments produced from megakaryocytes, special cells in the bone marrow. Blood normally contain 1,50,000, 1 lakh 1,50,000 and 3,50,000 platelets. Okay. Platelets can release a variety of substances, most of which are involved in the coagulation or clotting of blood. A reduction in their number can lead to clotting disorder, which will lead to excessive loss of blood from the body. Blood groups. As you know, blood of human beings differ in certain aspects, though it appears to be similar. Various type of grouping of blood has been done. Two such groups are ABO and Rh negative, are widely used all over the world. ABO grouping. ABO grouping is based on the presence or absence of two surface antigen. Chemical antigens क्या होते हैं? Chemical that can induce immune response on the RBCs, namely A and B. Similarly, the plasma of different individuals contain two natural antibodies, protein produced in response to antigen. तो antibodies क्या होते हैं, antigen क्या होते हैं, ये सब पता होना चाहिए. The distribution of antigen and antibodies in 4 groups of blood, A, B, AB and O. ये टेबल में दे रखा है नीचे. You probably know that during blood transfusion, any blood cannot be used. The blood of a donor has to be carefully matched with the blood of a recipient before any blood transfusion to avoid severe problems of clumping. Clumping is destruction of RBCs. The donor's capability is shown in table. फिगर 18.1 में दिया हुआ है कि ब्लड ग्रुप ए है, एंटीजन कौन सा होता है, ए पे ए, बी पे बी, ए बी पे ए बी, और ओ पे कोई एंटीजन नहीं होता है. और एंटीबॉडीज कौन सी होती है, एंटी बी, एंटी ए, और ए बी में कोई नहीं होती है. ओ में कौन सी होती है, दोनों एंटी होती हैं. तो डोनर्स ग्रुप कौन सा होता है, ए ओ. ये सब याद होना चाहिए, पता होना चाहिए, सब पता होता है जनरली लोगों को. From the above mentioned table, it is evident that group O blood can be donated to person with any other blood group, and hence O group individual are called universal donor. Person with AB group can accept blood from person with AB as well as the other groups of blood. Therefore, such person are called universal recipient. Rh grouping. Another antigen, the Rh antigen, similar to one present in rhesus monkey, hence Rh, is also observed on the surface of RBCs of majority, nearly 80% of humans. Such individuals are called Rh positive, and those in whom this antigen is absent are called Rh negative. An Rh negative person is exposed to, if exposed to Rh positive blood, will form specific antibodies against the Rh antigen. Therefore, Rh group should also be matched before transfusions. Special case of Rh incompatibility, mismatching has been observed between the Rh negative blood of a pregnant mother with Rh positive blood of the fetus. तो मदर कैसी है, Rh negative, और fetus कैसा है, Rh positive. Rh antigen of the fetus do not get exposed to the Rh negative blood of the mother in the first pregnancy, as the two bloods are well separated by the placenta. However, during the delivery of the first child, there is a possibility of exposure of the maternal blood to small amount of the Rh positive blood from the fetus. थोड़ा चांस होता है कि मिक्सिंग हो जाए. In such cases, the mother starts preparing antibodies against Rh antigen in her blood. In case of her subsequent pregnancies, the Rh antibodies from the mother Rh negative can leak into the blood of the Rh positive fetus and destroy the fetal RBCs. This could be fatal to the fetus or could cause severe anemia and jaundice to the baby. This condition is called erythroblastosis fetalis. This can be avoided by administering an anti-Rh antibody to the mother immediately after delivery of the first child. Okay, किसको लगाना है? मदर को लगाना है ताकि एंटीबॉडीज ना बने नेक्स्ट प्रेगनेंसी में. Next is coagulation of blood. You know that when you cut your finger or hurt yourself, your wound does not continue to bleed for a long time. Usually the blood stops flowing after some time. Do you know why? Blood exhibits coagulation or clotting in response to an injury or trauma. This is a mechanism to prevent excessive loss of blood from the body. You would have observed a dark reddish brown scum formed at the site of a cut or an injury over a period of time. It is a clot or coagulum formed mainly of a network of threads called fibrins. Thread से बना होता है in which dead and damaged formed elements of blood are trapped. Fibrins are formed by the conversion of inactive fibrinogen in the plasma by the enzyme thrombin. ठीक है, तो thrombin से ही प्रोड्यूस होता है एंजाइम. Thrombin in turn are formed from another inactive substance present in the plasma called prothrombin. तो prothrombin से thrombin बना. ठीक है, प्रोथ्रोम्बिन से थ्रोम्बिन बना. ठीक है, और यहाँ पे कौन सा एंजाइम हुआ? थ्रोम्बोकाइनेज. फिर थ्रोम्बिन खुद एक एंजाइम की तरह एक्ट करता है और फिब्रिनोजन को फिब्रिन में कन्वर्ट कर देता है और फिब्रिन बाद में क्लॉट कर देता है. थ्रोम्बोकाइनेज इज रिक्वायर्ड फॉर द अबव रिएक्शन. तो प्रोथ्रोम्बिन से थ्रोम्बिन, कौन सा एंजाइम? थ्रोम्बोकाइनेज. फिर फिब्रिनोजन से फिब्रिन, कौन सा एंजाइम? थ्रोम्बिन. ओके. This complex is formed by a series of linked enzymic reactions, cascade process इसे कहते हैं, involving a number of factors present in the plasma in an inactive state. An injury or a trauma stimulate the platelets in the blood to release certain factors which activate the mechanism of coagulation. Certain factors released by the tissue at the site of injury also can initiate coagulation. कैल्शियम आयंस प्ले अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल इन क्लॉटिंग. तो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. ये पूछा जाता है कि क्लॉटिंग में कौन सा आयन रोल प्ले करता है. तो कौन सा आयन रोल प्ले करता है? कैल्शियम आयन. नेक्स्ट इज लिम्फ. लिम्फ क्या होता है? टिश्यू फ्लूइड. एज द ब्लड passes through the capillaries in tissue, some water along with many small water soluble substances move out into the space between the cells of tissues, leaving the larger protein and most of the formed element in the blood vessels. This fluid released out is called the interstitial fluid or tissue fluid. It has the same mineral distribution as that in plasma. Exchange of nutrients, gases, etc. between the blood and the cells always occur through this fluid. An elaborate network of vessels called the lymphatic vessels collect this fluid and drains back to the major veins. The fluid present in the lymphatic system is called the lymph. Lymph is a colorless fluid containing specialized lymphocytes which are responsible for the immune response of the body. Lymph is also an important carrier for nutrient, hormones, etc. Fats are absorbed through lymph in the lacteals present in the intestinal villi. Lymph से भी क्वेश्चंस आते हैं. नेक्स्ट इज सर्कुलेटरी पाथवे. द सर्कुलेटरी पैटर्न्स आर ऑफ टू टाइप, ओपन और क्लोज्ड. Open circulatory system is present in arthropod and mollusk, in which blood pumped by the heart passes through large vessels into open spaces or body cavity called sinuses. Annelids and chordates have a closed circulatory system in which the blood pumped by the heart is always circulated through a closed network of blood vessels. This pattern is considered to be more advantageous as the flow of fluid can be more precisely regulated. All vertebrates possess a muscular chambered heart. Fishes have a two-chambered heart with an atrium and a ventricle. एम्फीबियंस एंड द रेप्टाइल्स एक्सेप्ट क्रोकोडाइल। रेप्टाइल में सारे आएंगे, उसमें क्रोकोडाइल नहीं आते हैं, बाकी सारे आते हैं। एंड हैव अ 3 चैम्बर्ड हार्ट विद 2 एट्रिया एंड अ सिंगल वेंट्रिकल। एक एट्रिया होगा और 2 एट्रिया होंगे और एक वेंट्रिकल होगा। वेयर एज क्रोकोडाइल, birds and mammals possess a 4 chambered heart with 2 atria and 2 ventricles. In fishes, the heart pumps out deoxygenated blood, which is oxygenated by the gills and supplied to the body part from deoxygenated from where deoxygenated blood is returned to the heart. Single circulation. Okay. In amphibians and reptiles, the left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the gills, lungs, skin, and the right atrium gets the deoxygenated blood from other body parts. However, they get mixed up in the single ventricle which pumps out mixed blood. तो इसे क्या कहेंगे? Incomplete double circulation. In birds and mammals, oxygenated and deoxygenated blood received by the left and right atria respectively passes on to the ventricles of the same sides. The ventricle pump it out without any mixing up, that is, 2 separate circulatory pathways are present in these organisms. Hence, these animals have double circulation. Let us study the human circulatory system. Human circulatory system. Human circulatory system, also called the blood vascular system, consists of a muscular chambered heart, a network of closed branching blood vessels and blood, the fluid which is circulated. Heart, the mesodermally derived organ, is situated in the thoracic cavity in between the two lungs, slightly tilted to the left. It has the size of a clenched fist, band mutti. Okay, it is protected by a double-walled membranous bag, pericardium, enclosing the pericardial fluid. A heart has 4 chambers, 2 relatively small upper chamber called atria and 2 larger lower chambers called ventricles. A thin muscular wall called the inner atrial septum separate the right and left atria, whereas a thick walled the interventricular septum separate the left and right ventricles. The atrium and the ventricle of the same side are also separated by a thick fibrous tissue called the atrioventricular septum. However, each of these septa are provided with an opening through which the two chambers of the same side are connected. The opening between the right atrium and the left ventricle is guarded by a valve from the 3 muscular flaps or cusp, the tricuspid valve, whereas a bicuspid or mitral valve. तो bicuspid या mitral दोनों पे क्वेश्चंस आते हैं, एक ही चीज है. The opening between the left atrium and the left ventricle. The opening of the right and the left ventricle into the pulmonary and the aorta, respectively, are provided with the semilunar valves. The valve in the heart allow the flow of blood only in one direction, that is from atria to the ventricles and from the ventricle to the pulmonary artery or aorta. These valves prevent any backward flow. तो मैंने पहले ही बताया था कि valve क्या करते हैं? Backward flow को prevent करते हैं. The entire heart is made of cardiac muscles. The walls of ventricles are much thicker than that of atria. Specialized cardiac musculature called the nodal tissue is also distributed in the heart. A patch of this tissue is present in the right upper corner of the right atria called SAN, sinoatrial node. तो उसका कहाँ पे है ये पूरा लोकेशन पता होना चाहिए. Another mass of this tissue is seen in the lower left corner of the right atrium close to the atrioventricular septum called the atrioventricular node, AVN. A bundle of nodal fibers, atrioventricular bundle, AV bundle, continue from the AVN which passes through the atrioventricular septa to merge on the top of the interventricular septum and immediately divides into a right and left bundle. These branches give rise to minute fiber throughout the ventricular musculature of the respective sides and are called Purkinje fibers. The nodal musculature has the ability to generate action potential without any external stimuli, that is, it is auto-excitable. However, the number of action potential that could be generated in a minute vary at different parts of the nodal system. The SAN can generate the maximum number of action potential, that is 70 to 75 per minute, and is responsible for initiating and maintaining the rhythmic contractile activity of the heart. Therefore, it is called the pacemaker. Our heart normally beats 70 to 75 times in a minute, average 72 beats per minute. Cardiac cycle. How does the heart function? Let us take a look. To begin with, all the four chambers of the heart are in a relaxed state, that is, they are in a joint diastole. As the tricuspid and bicuspid valves are open, blood from the pulmonary vein and vena cava flows into the right and left and the right ventricle, respectively, through the right and left atria. The semilunar valves are closed at this stage. The SAN now generates an action potential which stimulates both the atria to undergo a simultaneous contraction, the atrial systole. This increases the flow of blood into the ventricles by about 30%. The action potential is conducted to the ventricular side by the AVN and AV bundle, from where the bundle of His transmit it through the entire ventricular musculature. This causes the ventricular muscles to contract. When ventricular systole, the atria undergoes relaxation, that is diastole, systole is contraction and diastole is relaxation. तो ये क्वेश्चंस के टाइम कंफ्यूजन हो जाती है. Coinciding with the ventricular systole, ventricular systole increases the ventricular pressure, causing the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves due to attempted backflow of blood into the atria. As the ventricular pressure increases further, the semilunar valve guarding the pulmonary artery right side and the aorta left side are forced open, allowing the flow of blood into the ventricles to flow through these vessels into the circulatory pathways. The ventricles now relax, ventricular diastole, and the ventricular pressure falls, causing the closure of the semilunar valve, which prevent the backflow of blood into the ventricles. As the ventricular pressure declines further, the tricuspid and bicuspid valve are pushed open by the pressure in the atria exerted by the blood which was being emptied into them by the veins. The blood now once again moves freely to the ventricle. The ventricle and atria are now again in a relaxed state, joint diastole, as earlier. Soon the SAN generate a new action potential and the event described above are repeated in that sequence and the process continues. This sequential event in the heart, which is cyclically repeated, is called cardiac cycle and is consist of systole and diastole of both the atria and the ventricle. As mentioned earlier, the heart beats 72 times per minute. That is, that many cardiac cycles are performed per minute. From this, it could be deduced that the ड्यूरेशन ऑफ अ कार्डियक साइकिल इज 0.8 सेकेंड. तो ये भी याद रखना, ड्यूरेशन कितनी होती है, 0.8 सेकेंड की होती है. ड्यूरिंग अ कार्डियक साइकिल ईच वेंट्रिकल पंप्स आउट अप्रोक्सीमेटली 70 ml of blood, which is called the stroke volume. The stroke volume multiplied by the heart rate, number of beats per minute, gives the cardiac output. Therefore, the cardiac output can be defined as the volume of blood pumped out by each ventricle per minute and averages 5,000 ml or 5 liters in a healthy individual. This body has the ability to alter the stroke volume as well as the heart rate and thereby the cardiac output. For example, the cardiac output of an athlete will be much higher than that of an ordinary man. During each cardiac cycle, two prominent sounds are produced which can be easily heard through a stethoscope. The first heart sound lub is associated with the closure of a tricuspid and bicuspid valves, whereas the second heart sound lub is associated with the closure of semilunar valves. These sounds are of clinical diagnostic significance. Next is ECG. ECG is electrocardiograph. You are probably familiar with this scene from a typical hospital television show. ठीक है, ये तो होता ही है, ये सब जो लिखा है यहाँ पे. As the patient goes into cardiac arrest, ठीक है. ये सब मैंने नहीं पढ़ा है, क्योंकि ये सब तो पता है क्या लिखा है, वो टीवी के शो में जैसे दिखाते हैं वैसे ही. This type of machine, ECG, electrocardiograph, is used to obtain an electrocardiogram. ठीक है. ECG क्या है? ये मशीन है. इसका फुल फॉर्म ग्राफ है. ग्राफ आता है इसमें, और ग्राम क्या है? उसे ग्राफ को कहते हैं, मतलब उल्टा है. ECG is a graphical representation of a electrical activity of the heart during a cardiac cycle. It obtain a standard ECG. तो फिगर दे रखा है नेक्स्ट पेज पे 18.3, बिल्कुल ऐसे ही होता है. PQRST कर्व होते हैं इसमें. ए पेशेंट इज कनेक्टेड टू द मशीन विद 3 इलेक्ट्रिकल लीड, one to each wrist and to the left ankle, that continuously monitor the heart activity. For a detailed evaluation of the heart function, multiple leads are attached to the chest region. Here we will talk only about a standard ECG. Each peak in the ECG is identified with the letter from P to T that corresponds to a specific electrical activity of the heart. The P wave represents the electrical excitation or depolarization of the atria, which leads to the contraction of both the atria. The QRS complex represents the depolarization of the ventricle, which initiates the ventricular contraction. The contraction starts shortly after Q and marks the beginning of the systole. The T wave represents the return of the ventricle from excited to normal state, that is repolarization. The end of the T wave marks the end of the systole. Obviously, by counting the numbers of QRS complexes that occur in a given time period, one can determine the heartbeat rate of an individual. Since the ECG obtained from different individuals have roughly the same shape for a given lead configuration, any deviation from this shape indicate a possible abnormality or disease. Hence, it is of a great clinical significance. Double circulation. The blood flows strictly by a fixed route through blood vessels, the arteries and the veins. Basically, each artery and vein consist of 3 layers: an inner lining of squamous endothelium, the tunica intima, a middle layer of smooth muscle and elastic fibers, the tunica media, and an external layer of fibrous connective tissue with collagen fibers, the tunica externa. The tunica media is comparatively thin in the veins. ठीक है, veins में क्या होती हैं? Thin होती हैं. As mentioned earlier, the blood pumped by the right ventricle enters the pulmonary artery, whereas the left ventricle pumps into the aorta. The deoxygenated blood pumped into the pulmonary artery is passed on to the lungs, from where the oxygenated blood is carried out by the pulmonary vein into the left atria. This pathway constitute the pulmonary circulation. The oxygenated blood entering from the aorta is carried by a network of arteries and arterioles and capillaries to the tissue, from where the deoxygenated blood is collected by the system of venules, veins and vena cava and emptied into the right atrium. This is the systemic circulation. तो pulmonary circulation और systemic circulation आना चाहिए, important है, okay? This systemic circulation provides nutrients, O2 and other essential substances to the tissues and takes CO2 and other harmful substances away for elimination. Okay, a unique vascular contraction exists between the digestive tract and liver called hepatic portal system. The hepatic portal vein carries blood from intestine, the liver before it is delivered to the systemic circulation. A special coronary system of blood vessels is present in our body exclusively for the circulation of blood to and from the cardiac musculature. अब यहाँ पे क्या दे रखा है? एक प्लान दे रखा है सर्कुलेशन का ह्यूमंस में. पल्मनरी आर्टरी है, पल्मनरी वेन है, यहाँ पे क्या है? राइट एट्रिया, लेफ्ट वेंट्रिकल, लेफ्ट एट्रिया, लेफ्ट वेंट्रिकल, ये पूरा हार्ट का सिस्टम है. और ये डॉर्सल अओर्टा है, ये पूरा हम लोग को याद रखना होगा. ठीक है, वेना कावा कहाँ से आ रही है, आर्टरीज है, आर्टरीज का, वेन का, कैपिलरी का डायग्राम. ठीक है. Next is regulation of cardiac activity. Normal activities of the heart are regulated intrinsically, that is auto-regulated by specialized muscles, nodal tissue. Hence the part is called myogenic special neural center in the medulla oblongata can operate the cardiac action through ANS. ANS is autonomic nervous system. Neural signal through the sympathetic nerves part of ANS can increase the rate of heartbeat, the strength of ventricular contraction, and thereby the cardiac output. On the other hand, parasympathetic neural signal, another component of ANS, decrease the rate of heartbeat, speed of conduction of action potential, and thereby the cardiac output. Adrenal medullary hormones and also can also increase the cardiac output. तो medullary hormones जो होते हैं वो भी क्या करते हैं, बढ़ाते हैं इसको आउटपुट को. नेक्स्ट इज डिसऑर्डर्स. डिसऑर्डर्स क्या होंगे अब यहाँ पे? हाई बीपी, हाई ब्लड प्रेशर, दैट इज हाइपरटेंशन. हाइपरटेंशन is the term for blood pressure that is higher than normal, 120/80. In this measurement, 120 mmHg, millimeters of mercury pressure, is the systolic or pumping pressure, and 80 mmHg is the diastolic or resting pressure. If repeated checks of blood pressure of an individual is 140/90 या 140/90 or higher, it shows hypertension. High blood pressure leads to heart diseases and also affect vital organs like brain and kidney. Coronary artery disease, CAD. Coronary artery disease, often referred to as atherosclerosis, affect the vessels that supply blood to the heart muscle. It is caused by deposit of calcium, fat, cholesterol, and fibrous tissue, which makes the lumen of heart arteries narrow. Angina. Angina means यहाँ पे एक तरह angina pectoris, also called angina pectoris. A symptom of acute chest pain appears when no enough oxygen is reaching the heart muscle. Angina can occur in men and women of any age, but it is more common among the middle-aged and elderly. It occurs due to the condition that affect the blood flow. Heart failure. Heart failure means the state of heart when it is not pumping blood effectively enough to meet the needs of the body. It is sometimes called congestive heart failure because congestion of the lungs is one of the main symptoms of this disease. Heart failure is not same as cardiac arrest. When cardiac arrest is when the heart stops beating, or the heart attack. When the heart muscle is suddenly damaged by an inadequate blood supply. और समरी में यहाँ पे कुछ भी बाहर से पॉइंट नहीं है तो समरी डिस्कस करनी ही नहीं है. और इसी तरह हमारा ये चैप्टर भी एंड होता है. थैंक यू सो मच. प्लीज़ हमारे वीडियो को लाइक करें, शेयर करें, सब्सक्राइब करें, और प्लीज़ 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 अच्छे से पढ़ाई करिए और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा वीडियोस देखिए और शेयर भी करिए. थैंक यू सो मच. बाय.